yes,
Wow.
we are back with Office Hours, full with a soundtrack from the Play It app from Joanne, as promised.
Love it.
Yeah, that
You need
is.
to get you some faders. You need to be able to like fade in and fade out. That's the right MO.
I know. My audio production value here, not the highest. So apologies for those who are looking for a higher quality of production. But we've got a few more clips that we can play in future Office Hours. But I thought that one is the West Coast rap clip shared from Joanne. So it's into that. All right. Well, we are back here on a Tuesday, Office Hours. Rahul is going to join us as well. He is trying to deal with a few audio issues that he's had this morning. Rahul, can we hear you?
Negative.
Still no on the audio.
Rahul will be doing sign language then throughout today's presentation. And
he does have something interesting to share, so hopefully we can get through those audio issues at some point during this chat. But it looks like we've got John and Varun here already. Welcome to you both. I think you both have been in previous Office Hours before. You know the routine. If you have a question for us, please post it in the Q&A widget here in Crowdcast. Otherwise, so we're starting with no questions to start. So we may immediately start diving into a handful of community posts that I thought might be interesting to dive into.
Well, one thing we could do also, maybe we do this at the end, but we could show some of the new stuff as well if we wanted to kind of get feedback from people.
I mean, I'm open to either. We could start with new stuff, or we could try to hit 2 or 3 community posts.
Let's hit the community posts, and then we can show the new stuff near the tail end.
John votes for new stuff.
All right. Well, let's go through one community post, and then we'll take a detour. Yeah. And I'll try to open up. I'll try to get. I'm not on my normal browser, so I'll try to get signed into Draftbit.
Okay. I will share this one post from Joanne because she so thoughtfully gave us our intro music. So Joanne's question here is essentially like she wants to be able to have the ability for a user to print a screen or content that she's sharing inside of her app. And so I know Brian and I looked at this briefly. I know you have something specifically, a couple of things you could share, but this is definitely something that requires a little bit of custom code, maybe a little bit to a lot of custom code potentially. So I know, Brian, you found a package specifically that might work for this.
Yeah. So Joanne, there is a package called Expo Print that you could bring in the custom packages part of Draftbit. And we would need to figure out what the right version number is. I'm not certain what the right version is off the top of my head, but I'll post a link to the documentation here. But if you check out that link, like that would be the package to bring in. And then there's some work in custom code to do. So we don't have this built into Draftbit in terms of actions or components. The trickiest part about this, about creating a printable thing, is that you're going to have to create the HTML that gets printed. So there's not something built into Expo or React Native that can just take the screen that you're on, turn it into HTML and print it. The way that it works is you would actually have to create that HTML of what you want the printed version of whatever it is that you're printing. I assume in your world it's music, sheet music, or something like that. And so you'd have to create the HTML structure for that printed, what you want that printed page to look like, fill in the variables from your page or from your data. And then you could use, once you had that, you could take that HTML and send it off using this Expo package to printers. And this works on both iOS, Android, and the web. So it's nice. That's a nice thing that it would work cross-platform. But the hard part, I think, is creating the HTML. And so if you go to that link that I sent you, there's like an example, a little bit of an example at the top, and you can see that they have this variable for HTML, constant for HTML, and they kind of have, what they want to print in there. You would have to do that, but you'd also have to fill in kind of the variables from your data. Not too hard to do, but the reason, that's one of the reasons we don't have it built into Draftbit, is because we don't have an easy way for you to take something and turn it into HTML. You'd have to create that HTML and then print it out. But it's totally doable. And if you keep the HTML simple, it's probably pretty straightforward. I wouldn't say it's fast, but I don't think it's complicated, I think, to do it. So might take, it might be one of those things where you can explore on your own with the custom package and the custom code and see how far you can get with the Expo example, post into the custom code community and see if others can help you. The other alternative route would be like, maybe this is something you hire an expert to do, spend a couple $100 and have an expert kind of write you a printing function and printing kind of template component and some things like that. Maybe that's where I would go with it.
Another suggestion here from John is, how about converting to PDF and offering that to the user?
It's going to be the same. I don't know of a specific pack. I'd have to go look for a package specifically, but it's going to be the same issue that you have to do with printing, in that you're going to have to provide the HTML or the structure for the PDF, and that's going to be separate from what's produced in Draftbit, because remember, React Native code is not HTML, right? Like it's not like web code. Like it has different components. It's not HTML structure. Now on the web, we do produce a PWA version of your app, but that's an output, in the same way that like a binary for the app stores is an output. It's not something you can directly control from the input. The code you create in Draftbit is React Native code. And so it's not the same thing. That said, HTML is pretty straightforward. So again, I don't think it'd be very hard to create an HTML structure and then provide a print. By the way, on most devices, Apple and Android, the print device would then let you save as a PDF. So you might get 2 for the price of 1. But if you wanted to go direct to a PDF, I suspect that there is also a package that can take HTML, turn it into a PDF, and save it out. Yeah, I mean, I can search for it, but off the top of my head, I don't know what that would be. So it looks like, actually, it looks like literally that library lets you both print or save to a PDF. So you're going to be in the same boat, like I mentioned. You're going to have to create the HTML. That's the hardest. That would be the again, I don't think it's hard, but that would be the most kind of involved part of it, I suspect.
Thank you, Brian. Rahul, audio?
Yes, I think I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ta-da!
You are good.
There we go.
Wonderful. Well, we do have a question in celebration of you having your audio. The question from Varun is it possible to update the guide for authentication with Firebase? So just to clarify, Varun, what you mean by this one, do you have a specific guide that you're referencing? Are you talking about like our authentication documentation that we have? Are you talking about like a specific Firebase auth guide or tutorial that you were looking at? Like, I'm curious, just when we're talking about the same thing, we do have a number of tutorials and documentation out there related to authentication specifically, and then also Firebase on its own. I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Cool, thank you. He said, 1 second, he's going to try to find the link. And then I guess related to that, while you're looking for the link, Varun, is there something specific about the guide that isn't working for you? I imagine that's part of the reason why you're asking the question, is you're following this guide and not able to get it to work. So just kind of curious for you to share more about what issues you're running into. John says,
I think we have.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
I think we have a working. Sorry about that. I think we have a working documentation or tutorial on Firebase auth with email and password. We don't have a social auth documentation yet with Firebase, but as far as I know, there's a working documentation in the tutorial section for Firebase authentication. So I'll try that. If you have any problems, you can always ask questions, and I'll gladly answer those for you. Because I've tried that recently and made it work on my end. So do let us know if you are trying something else or if you're just using the email and password authentication with Firebase.
Yep, fair point. John speculates he's looking for social auth, and to Rahul's point, we haven't covered that yet. All right. Well, while Varun is looking for the specific document, Rahul, since you're here and you have audio, and we're talking about Firebase, I believe you had a use case that you kind of wanted to walk through that was inspired by a question in the community.
Certainly. So I have created a document for making multiple requests, Firebase requests with one button. And I have a working demo here, which I will go through. I'll go ahead and share my screen and show everyone what I'm working on.
Just so everyone is clear, this is in response to Simon's question in the community.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So that's the question. So basically, his question was that he's trying to create two separate documents in two collections with one press of a button. So what is happening with him is he's unable to do that with our builder right now, and we are looking into that as well. So for now, what I have is a workaround in which you can use a little bit of custom code and achieve what you wanted to achieve. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you what I have. Just to confirm, is my screen visible to everyone? I will go ahead and magnify it. I hope that's better for everyone. Fine. So again, here we go. Let me explain what I'm doing first. So I have a form here, which basically takes a name and an email. And I want this name and email to go into two separate collections in our Firebase. For that, I have set up this button, which does all the actions here. So it's a very small tutorial, so I'll try to describe it as much as I can. So in this first request, what I'm doing is I'm creating a document in what is the first list. So there are two collections. One is the first list, and the second one is the second list. Pardon my imagination there. And what I'm doing is basically I'm updating these two fields, these text components here, a name and an email. And sorry. So, and then for the other document, what I've done is I've created a custom function. What basically does is it does the exact same thing, but it does it to the second list. I'll show you the custom function here as well, what's going on there. So it's a very basic function. What it's doing is it's hitting the second collection here, the second list, and it's gonna update the name and the email in both of them. So this is right now a workaround for updating two documents with one button in Firebase. So if I can just go ahead and enter some information here. And when I press this button, still two actions, sorry, excuse me for that. I was using the draft mode. So I've just switched to the web mode here. I'll do that again. So I enter my name, I enter my email. And once I press this button, so these two actions will be triggered, creating two separate documents in two lists. And obviously it doesn't show, I don't have a response screen here, but what I can try and do quickly if possible is I can go to my Firebase console and show everyone what is actually happening. Oh, excuse me. Might have to change the list here. My browser. This just shows how prepared I was to do this. Pardon me. So here's my collection in Firebase. And I just wanted to show you guys that those collections were successfully updated. So the collections we are talking about is the first list and the second list. And so there we go. So it got populated in the first collection here. I've created a new document with my name and my email address. And if I take a look at the second list, should be one of these here. There we go. So I have this document updated as well. So if Simon is here, we will point him to this video to showcase how this can be achieved. And if anyone has any other questions, you can please feel free to ask me those questions now.
Thank you, Rahul. Super helpful. Yeah, if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to share. Oh, Rahul really dropped the mic on that one. He's entirely out. Here, let me invite him back on screen. All right.
He's done.
Yeah,
all set.
That's all he came here to do. Okay, so I want to jump back into Varun's question again, because he posted the link to the Firebase tutorial, the auth tutorial that Aman wrote like 6 months ago. And I asked kind of, hey, was there something specific that wasn't working or something you knew you're looking for? And then he responded, it was more along the lines of updating aspects of the tutorial since Draftbit has a new interface. And certain things like import Firebase auth should be changed. So like the whole @ thing, which has come up multiple times in the past, like isn't documented in that older tutorial. So yeah, that is Varun, that's totally fair. That tutorial is 6 months old. Surely there are aspects of our UI that have changed since then. And it makes sense for us to make sure that we make that up to date. And so I will make a note to nudge our team. Aman probably would be the one to update this and let him know. So appreciate you mentioning that. But if there is something specifically that you're getting stuck on, just let us know. There's updating that doc so that it helps other users in the future. But if there's something that's holding you back right now, like we're here to help, right now, if we can. So, feel free to follow up with another question or just add more comments to this guy. So I'll leave it open. You're welcome. Cool. So John asks, when will the bug that prevents deleting screen level data requests be resolved? And he references a community post that he made about this a little while back, like last week, I think. And Rahul responded to this and said he filed a bug report for it. And that is the extent of what I know about where this is in our process. So I don't have a firm answer to that question. It's definitely, if we have a bug that's reported, it's in queue. I mean, I can log into our bug tracker right now and see.
John, is it blocking you from doing anything, or is it just annoying? Just messy. Yeah, I mean, that's I think probably why it hasn't been fixed yet. We've had a couple high priority bugs that have come up that have been blocking users. So I think it's definitely in the queue. Don't worry, it's in the process to be fixed. But some of these things appear easy. I think this one's actually relatively straightforward. We've just had a bunch of hard things stacked up in front of it. But sometimes things that appear easy can end up taking an engineer like an entire day to kind of sort through. And we've been kind of trying to triage and troubleshoot a bunch of the kind of strangeness that we were seeing with apps not loading in the last 24, 48 hours. So that's probably what slowed us down on this one. But we have a few Firebase bugs that are now stacked up that I think mostly are just annoying and not truly blocking. But I think we will get to clean them up, I would say, sometime in the near future. So stay tuned.
It's definitely not. No bug is ever off the radar. It's just in a queue. And as Brian said, we have some ruthless prioritization that we had to do to try to resolve things that are most blocking to most users. So, but thank you for holding us accountable for following up on that. Okay. So Jay teased this question in the community earlier. So his question is, the Bubble API uses backend API workflows to allow you to do complex searches, filter, and sorting. But the workflow API only takes post calls. So this prevents using the fetch function to do this, as it only takes a get. And if you can't do post calls on page load, is there some other way to automatically run a post API call action anywhere in the app? Maybe a custom function that can run an action, is his question. So just to kind of summarize a bit, so what Jay ultimately wants to do here is to be able to do a post and a fetch in Draftbit. I think that's the first thing that he's saying, which we don't yet support. And then, he's also saying, is there some way in Draftbit to, essentially force this action to happen, on page load automatically, which again, Draftbit doesn't yet support. And so in light of those two things, I think the heart of his question is, is there some other way for him to get this user behavior or this behavior in the app that he wants, given kind of where the state of the Draftbit product is right now? That's my summary of kind of what Jay's question is. So I don't have an easy answer off the top of my head to that one. So I might kick it to Brian or Rahul if either one of you guys have inspiration on how to approach this.
Yeah, it's tricky. I don't think we have an ability to execute custom functions on screen load.
We don't
currently. What I'm going to propose is not recommended, but you could probably create a custom component that performed a post when the custom component loaded. You would have to create you'd have to essentially do a fetch request as part of code in the custom component, or a post request. So not easy to do, and may cause other strange problems for you, but technically doable. So that might be, if you need to be unblocked on this in the short run, that's probably where I would go. I think we have discussed as a team enabling the fetch component to enable post requests and things like that. I don't know that we have a specific timeline on when that would be possible. The alternative is 100 nested fetch calls. Well, you definitely don't want to do 100 nested fetch calls. That probably isn't going to work. Yeah, I mean, I think this is. I think you found like kind of a use case for something. We were often asking ourselves, like, what is the use case for why you would need to post in a fetch component, why you would need to do some of these other things. So I think this is a good use case. I don't think we had this on our radar, but I think something we can take a look at. I just don't think it's not likely to like drop in the next 2 or 3 days. So if you need this to be unblocked, I would go down the route of creating a custom component that did the post request as part of like displaying it. And there's a little bit of, that'll be a little bit involved, but it should work.
That approach got the thumbs up from George. Brian, your unsanctioned suggestion is sanctioned by George.
I don't know if a thumbs up is sanctioning it, but
it's approval.
George, by giving his thumbs up, is now offering to support this fully. And no, I think Jay, I don't think we have a guide for this, but I will try to. What I will do is after the call, I'll write it on my notes. I'll try to. We'll try to go find something for you that might be helpful in the React Native world, and we can post it. Again, I think there's going to be some trial and error here. There's going to be some experimentation. So, it's going to depend on how comfortable you are working in custom code. If you're not comfortable working in custom code, this is going to be quite hard to accomplish. So if you're comfortable, then I think sort of trying things out and seeing if it works, then I think this would be something you could probably experiment with. But, tread carefully. it may be difficult. So I will try to find some stuff for you.
George says, I've used a custom component that is executed on screen load to perform actions. So
right.
Yep, definitely need to be okay with custom code. Agreed.
I think I can.
This too.
Yeah, I think I can take a dig at it, and I'll post something for you on the custom code channel and try to get a resolution for you, because I have some experience with working with custom code on that. So I'll go ahead and give it a try for you.
All right, well then there you go. You're going to get something better than me. You're going to get Rahul digging in and helping you. So there you go.
Awesome.
I can't say it's better, but definitely I can give it a shot.
Well, I don't write custom code, so it's necessarily better.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks for the question, Jay. And thanks for posting it here and in the community for us. So just to follow up on Varun's, kind of where he was feeling blocked and the reason why he was asking about the Firebase auth tutorial. He said he's hit a wall with Firebase and it keeps getting a resolve module Firebase app.js message and can't really get past that. I don't know, in the absence of other context, it's hard for me to know what could be causing that. I don't know. I mean, George is, in the chat, and obviously Rahul is here. You guys have tried a fair amount in Firebase in the past. You guys have experience that would suggest what you might be experiencing with that?
Certainly. So what I can do is I can take a look at what you're doing, Varun, after this live stream and try to point out a door for you, so we can see we can get that resolved for you as well. I can't really say what wall you're hitting because I haven't really had a look at your app. So once I do that, I will definitely try and help.
Yeah, I would, to follow up Rahul's suggestion, I would, if you don't already have a posting community, and I don't know that I saw one when I was reviewing posts this morning, kind of articulating what you're experiencing in a bit of detail, I would suggest throwing up a post in the community, and then Rahul could use that as a starting point to help you resolve it. Because definitely we should update that guide, but you shouldn't be running into issues. And so we should be able to support you in that. So please do create a post around that and we'll jump on it. So a couple more questions from John. I'll take this one first. Do you have a canny Draftbit bug listing similar to your roadmap system? We don't. We don't have a public site that kind of lists out all the bugs that have been reported and kind of where they stand in terms of our own progress and commitments to resolving them. Part of the reason why that is just so dynamic and sometimes it's hard to make. I mean, I'm maybe somewhat speaking for George here, but it can be difficult to post those things publicly and have someone feel oh, okay, this one might be next up, but then new things emerge that become even more urgent and more impactful to a large set of users. So once we start setting expectations publicly, we have to follow through with them. and it's harder to do that in a dynamic world of product development that we're in right now. So I think that's one of the main reasons why we don't make it public. It's a totally fair question. The roadmap thing is easier because those projects are longer gestating, and and once we ship new things, it's a nice way for us to update folks that were interested in those features that they're done. But the bug thing is just trickier. No, it's a totally fair point, John, that at least it's on our radar. But I think our history of bug resolution has been that we do get to these things. It's hard for us to be able to predict the cadence in which we do so. I don't know if Brian or George in the chat has anything more to add to that, but that's my kind of take on why we haven't done the same thing with bugs. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think it's just I feel like we do a decent job of circling back on the community posts when people have bugs. So it's not obvious to me that it adds more work for us to maintain another thing as well. And I think John, I understand why you want to know, but I think it's hard because to Tim's point, it's constantly changing depending on what's going on. And so it would be a lot of it would be another layer of things that just takes away from time from actually fixing the bugs or helping users to keep a bug site up to date kind of thing. So it's just a trade-off we're making right now.
Agreed. So John's other question that he posted is, can we invoke API endpoints that we set up from within custom code? Parenthetical, not just a simple HTTP request. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either, to be honest with you. We'd have to go experiment. There probably is a way. I don't know if we've revealed those types of. I know we have revealed other forms of variables. I don't know that we've revealed the endpoint related data to actually let you call an endpoint. I think that the other interesting question this brings up is, could you put a custom code as a list item? And I suspect you could probably do that. But I think we'd have to experiment is the answer to that question. Bring in one of the engineers.
Is there a specific use case that you had in mind, John, that you wanted to make happen with this, just out of curiosity? That might be a way for us to explore it if we had a use case that we were trying to get to work. All right. That's now we've got the awkward pause, John's probably typing something. We're just waiting for that. Or he stepped away, which is also possible. Oh, Brian, you're muted.
Sorry, I keep coughing, so.
All good. Okay. Well, now Brian coughed his way completely out of the chat. Yeah, it's complicated. Agreed. John says.
Sorry, I needed to get a drink. I couldn't speak for my coughing. I was going to say I could show off some of the new stuff if we want to use the last couple minutes for that.
I think that's a great use case.
Okay. Hold on. Let's see if I can do this. Share screen.
Jay asked, how old is Draftbit? Well, there's a couple different answers to that question. I think the technical answer is probably we've been working on Draftbit about 3.5 years. Specifically Draftbit, I think is probably around the right time frame. But there was a version of the company that wasn't Draftbit before Draftbit that was a completely different business that how long has it been out in public? 2.5 to 3 years. I think it was August. I want to say August 29. Was it August 2019 that we did public beta for the first time?
Yeah.
I think it was August 2019. So like 2.5 years ish.
By the way, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a couple years. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is we've introduced a new thing called screen variables. I think this may be behind a feature flag. So for those of you who want to get access to it, let us know if it may be public, it may not be, but we're doing a little bit of a beta. So for those of you who are watching, if you're curious and want to experiment this, we would love some feedback. So screen variables are kind of like global variables, but they are scoped to a specific screen, which is really useful because a lot of times you just need to, use some data or use a variable inside of a screen, but you don't need it to be on the whole app, right? And so you can kind of link these things together inside of a screen and just scope to that, which makes a lot of like data related stuff a lot easier. So you could create, so just so you know where to find these, right now they are in the data tab of the screen, which is also where navigation parameters live. We may move these out to somewhere else, but in the future. But for now, this is the best place to come and create them and monitor them. So we'll just create we'll call this variable Brian's variable, just for the sake of having a variable. And you can see that it's a string. You can change it. You can change its type. So you could say, I want this to be a number or a date or whatever. We're just going to use a string for now, just to make it easy. You can also set an initial value. So if you want this variable to be initialized with something before other data gets sort of put into it, you can certainly do that. We'll just call this like hello world. And I don't even think I need to use the quotes, but there we go. And this is, so now we have a variable created, but let's put it to use. So you'll see I have a text component and I have a text input component. So what I may want to do is go over, first let's link up this text component and we'll say the message I typed is message. And I'll put a little variable in here. And then as soon as I create that, I can link that to Brian's variable, right? So then you can see it's initialized with that hello world, which I created. But let's say I want to live update that. So now I can use this text input and I can attach it to Brian's variable. And then let's put myself into the web preview mode so things aren't in design mode. And now as I type this, I can sort of say like, oh, what's up? And you can see that the text component variable is changing live as I change things, right? So we have kind of this variable now that's scoped to the local, this just local screen. And what's neat about this is you wouldn't really necessarily do some of this stuff. You might, if you were doing something interesting, but you could have, for example, like a preview message or something like that. If you wanted to let users preview the post, you could certainly do some of the stuff I just showed you. But I think more useful than that is, if you, I got to type button correctly. Can't put a button in a text component. If you can also set buttons and do things with them now in actions. So you can see where it says set screen state. We're going to change that probably to set screen variable, but either way, I can do things now where I can manipulate these variables in actions, right? So if you had like a request going to the server, you could do that as part of your action. You could use this variable and display it and do some other fun things. So that's screen variables. They're like global variables or device variables, but they are scoped to a specific screen. And then the other maybe bigger undertaking thing that should be released to everyone now is some updates to how you can create API endpoints. So I'll just create a basic service here. We'll call this example data. Hold on. Nothing's changed on this screen. Go ahead, what? But you can see on this screen, when we're creating the endpoints, there's two new fields here. And so if you don't want to use this new functionality that it's called React Query, then you can leave these blank and your API endpoints will continue working just as they have historically. But the benefit of using React Query is that you get sort of the ability to manipulate data inside of lists, right? So let's say you had, like a to-do list app is an example we would often use. So if you had a to-do list app, you could pull down from the server a bunch of to-dos, and you could have a switch component in each one, whether it was done or not done. Well, right now inside of Draftbit, if you didn't use React Query, this new functionality we created, it'd be really hard to update them individually. You'd have to do separate post requests for each one, but this lets you essentially do that. So you can say, like, I want to get, let's say I wanted to get some sneakers. So I'm going to get a list of sneakers, and I'm going to call this sneakers, right? So like I'm telling Draftbit now what I'm doing. I'm getting many of the sneakers, and then you just fill out the rest like you would normally, right? So, and just do this and we'll test, and you'll see we get a list of sneakers. These are all sneakers from our example data. And I can also then go back and I might want to get the one of that. So individual sneaker. And again, we're going to choose sneakers because I'm getting one of the sneakers now. So this is like that pattern where if you had a list view and a detail view, you're going to want to have get many and get one. And as you do this, oh man, I don't know what a sneaker ID that's valid is, but let's just see. Yeah, I don't think that's a valid. Let me go for a second, go back, and I will get. Actually, I can just do it from the data panel. Let's get a valid ID. These IDs are a little wonky. We'll go back, create a new endpoint for get sneaker, get one, sneakers. Great. Again, not much has changed from a data perspective in the data panel, right? You're just setting up this role and this object type so that behind the scenes, we kind of know what you're doing. And when you do that, the benefit is that, and I'm not really gonna be able to show you with sneakers because I don't think sneakers are like to-do lists, but the benefit of doing this is that we now have a concept of kind of these object types at a higher level. And when you are manipulating the data, when you're coming and going between those lists, like if you're going between a list view and a detail view and you're creating something and you're coming back, all the stuff will refresh live, right? And so like that's the most noticeable update. It would take me a little bit longer to build the screen than we probably have time to do today. But if you wanted to create a new sneaker, one of the things that we often get asked for is, I need to be able to refresh the page as you're doing it. Well, in this mode, when you use React Query, everything happens kind of automatically. So you get live refreshing of data, you get all this stuff. The other thing that, like I mentioned before, and we're going to put out some guides and some content about this in the coming days, but you get the ability to run sort of requests with data inside of arrays. So again, if you had a list of 10 to-dos, you could flip one of those to done, which is something that's actually not really easy to do without this technology. This is why we rolled this out. I don't know if I'm explaining it perfectly well, but hopefully this kind of gives everyone enough of an intro to kind of go check it out, go play with it, go experiment with it. Let us know if you have feedback. Let us know if you understand the words we're using in the interface. We would love your feedback, and we'd love for you to try it out and see what you can do with it.
For sure. Like I think to follow up on that, I would encourage anyone to like post thoughts or questions into the community. Like, a lot of what we focus on in community is the ask for help, section, but there is feedback and ideas section. And sometimes people post in there. And so if you have feedback, around some of the things Brian mentioned, like how we explain how this functionality works, inside of Draftbit, for example, it's something we're really open to because we just released this and we really wanted to get the functionality out there, but like there probably is some opportunity for us to improve the experience. So I think, and I know George is also nudging his call to action in the community, looking for said ideas and feedback specifically on this in the feedback and ideas section. So, he just posted that in the chat window here. So please, please check that out and please give George feedback because he's really hungry for, to get people using this and to share their thoughts with him.
Looks like we have a question from John.
Yes.
About screen level custom code. So John, I assume what you're talking about are custom components. And yeah, we acknowledge the limitation right now. Having a single components file that's app wide is a little tricky, especially for those people that are using it a lot. I think we're talking about this a bunch right now. I don't have a specific on what will change or when it will change, but we are talking about this and thinking about it. It also, the reason we're also talking about it is not just that it's harder, to your point, but also it tends to cause more, like having one big components file tends to cause more issues while you're editing. So if you're making one change, then it can bring down your entire application, which is obviously not ideal. So again, something we're talking about, something we're actively thinking about, but we're not rolling it out today. So we would need some time to make some changes or figure out how we want to approach that. But it's definitely on our radar. Appreciate
that. And then John also did kind of, so my question earlier to John was like, hey, what's the use case, for the, being able to, hit an API endpoint within custom code. And so his follow-up was, he basically is trying to make an update to his Supabase backend from within custom code. So basically, like the actions that he needs are triggered from hooks and not on like a button press or some other action. So that's why he would want the endpoints in custom code to be able to basically trigger that hook. So that use case makes sense to me as something that you would want to do and potentially other users would want to do as well. So hopefully that's something that we can try, like as Brian suggested earlier, we could try in our own exploration of how to get this work, is maybe try actually your specific use case, either with Supabase or with Xano or with Airtable or something, and see what we can get working. Cool. Well, we have 11 minutes left, and we've exhausted our current list of questions while I try to kill a bug that just flew by me. I'll look at my list to see if there's any other. There was one other thing that I thought was interesting. Conversation from the community that I thought was interesting, that I was curious to get feedback on, maybe from my office hours mates, Rahul and Brian. So there was a good chat. There was like a nice back and forth in the community earlier. I'm going to post this link between a few users about analytics and doing some analytics integration in Draftbit. So Caleb had brought up, the idea of, like, hey, what if people tried? And like, brought up Google Analytics and Tag Manager. And then Nick brought up Segment. And, we had our friends from the Poisera app, Mariana and David, talk a bit around their approach with integrating analytics using Amplitude and Branch, and integrating Expose packages for that. So I don't know. I just thought this was like something that is probably going to come up more and more, that our users are obviously going to be interested in wanting to understand how their users are interacting with their app. So just curious, like, in the suite of possible solutions, Brian, I know you've built and worked on a number of mobile apps in the past and done analytics work within them. So any thoughts or tips for our users as they think about analytics integration moving forward?
Yeah.
As I put you on the spot.
I mean, I would use Segment personally. I mean, I think the benefit of Segment is that you can send your events to any destination platform. So, and I think there's a pretty good library with Expo that lets you just run things. And so I think it'd be very straightforward. We haven't done it, so I can't say for sure, but I think it seems like it would be very straightforward to create 2 custom functions, identify and track. And the way that Segment works is they kind of standardize a lot of the low level, event-driven requests to different analytics platforms. And those are the 2 that are most important, is identifying the user and then tracking something that they're doing. Right. And so I think you could bring in that Expo package. I suspect that you could write 2 custom functions for identify, for track. I suspect you could run those. Identify, you might need to attach to a custom component to do it because it need to do on screen load perhaps, or you could also do it when a user does any sort of action, or like when they log in, you could like when you go through your login post flow, you could do a identify request. And then when they do important actions that you want to monitor, you could do a track request, right? And so when a user updates their profile, when a user creates a new post, when a user purchases an item, when a user changes a setting, whatever, in your flow where you would create those on the server, right? You'd have a set of actions, one which would be like, posting to your server. And maybe the one right after that would be a track event that would say the user, posted a new thing or purchased an item or whatever. And I think those you could probably create those pretty straightforward with custom functions and do it. I'd like those to be Draftbit actions. I think Segment would be a good tool for us to integrate. I think it's fairly generalized, but I think in the list of things we want to do, that's on there, but it's not, at the top. We have many other things that I think would be, frankly, higher priority from a product priorities perspective. So I think until we get there, I think your best option is to do things with custom code and do some of that. I think if you're looking for something more generic, and what I mean by generic is where you don't actually have to build it into the app, like you just want things to happen magically for you, I think you're best off doing that at the step right before you, like when you export your code, doing that outside of Draftbit. Like if you want to bring in a generic SDK, I would get my app to the point where it was working fully, and then I would export the code and in code in GitHub or wherever, I would add in, amplitude or whatever. And I would keep that in like sort of a part of the app file structure that wouldn't be overwritten when I committed new changes from Draftbit into my GitHub repo, and a little bit of like merging logic that you have to deal with, but nothing that's too crazy. We have a lot of users that do things kind of like if we were in the TV world, it'd be like do it in post-production, like kind of the same thing in Draftbit. You like do it in post-production, like after you produce all of your app code, you do a couple things kind of right before you do a build. A lot of people switch out API keys or sensitive, API endpoints, especially if you're working with sensitive data. People put in environment variables or deal with environment variables. And so this would be another place where maybe analytics packages you might swap out kind of post Draftbit. Those are kind of the 2 paths I would say that are the best 2 paths, probably.
I think that's good advice. We use Segment at Draftbit. We love Segment. I would note the point that Mariana and David brought up in this thread, which is they're just, even though a Segment is a tool that integrates with basically every other thing that you would want to use for analytics or ad campaign tracking or whatever, some of those things they integrate with may involve some additional custom code to get those specific things working, which is something that they experience. So just something to note. If you go with Segment, if you're just looking for something that, if you don't have a need to potentially integrate multiple things, like trying to use amplitude like they have, for example, because it has because Expo supports it, also maybe one way to go if you're looking for a very simple, solution. We do have a couple more final questions. And I just want to get to those quickly before our time runs out. So John, basically, his question is like he sees the new React query, related, features in the product, but doesn't fully understand the utility of it from, Brian's overview. So And so can you demonstrate something that up until now was not possible pre-React query?
I can't in the 3 minutes we have left, but I can tell you, John, that we are releasing a bunch of content related to this in the coming days. So don't worry, there'll be plenty of guides and tutorials around what you can do and how to do it, and some videos and some other stuff. So give us, I think there's one that I don't know if Aman's thing is out right now. I think it might be, but very soon we'll have a bunch of things. So I think just stay tuned in the community. We'll post stuff.
Yeah, and again, please reply into George's thread on on thoughts. Like if there's something that's specifically unclear about what this can allow you to do now in the product, like we want to make that clear to people. So like you even asking this question is good feedback, and would love to see you elaborate on that in community as well. And then the other question that we got from Jay is, this is a good question. Is there a general plan, caveats are okay, to systematically over time add all or most of the components that match the native operating system framework? So an example he gave was, an example maybe down the list would be something like iOS speech recognizer that could be used to create transcriptions of audio files or speech. I think the general, I'll speak from my understanding, and then Brian, you can correct me if I am incorrect. But I mean, the first answer to your question is, I think, yes, we desire to support all of the components that Expo supports. Like we desire to do that. We don't do it today, but we desire to do that because, we use Expo inside of Draftbit, and Expo supports, certain packages and components that we have yet to support natively inside of Draftbit. And that's why we've written like custom code snippets and other tutorials to try to help, fill the gap, until we've supported those. Like, so for example, maps, I'll use that as an example, right? Like that's something that we haven't had as a native component in Draftbit, but it's something that you can use on a device, and Expo supports it. And so we've written guides around it in the past, and like are actively working on maps, for example, is something that we are likely to introduce into Draftbit in the pretty near future. So I do think the general plan over time is to support everything that Expo supports. I think again, the caveat to that, as you said, being that like that over time could be quite some time, because the desire to support those components is run up against other competing priorities that we have for advancing the ball in the product. So, but we do want to do that, going forward. The things that are not supported by Expo and speech recognizer, like Brian, I don't know if you know whether or not that one is or isn't. Oh, there you go. You got it. React Native voice. Look at that.
I think this one is so to kind of go where you were going with your question.
Yeah.
This specific thing. The answer, Jay, by the way, is that we would like to do it, like to Tim's point, if React Native and Expo have packages for it. Very hard for us to create those packages. Like we just don't have bandwidth as a team to be able to do that. So we're a little bit, we have, for different functionality, like we have to wait for the React Native community to create these kind of low level framework packages. But in this case, there is one, voice, that looks like it can do a bunch of those specific things around speech recognizer. That said, I just glanced through it. It looks like there's a little bit of like things you have to do in your app to enable this. So again, this might fit into that like post-production kind of mentality. Is you would kind of like, what I would do, again, thinking about this, is I would build the rest of my app except for the part that needed speech recognizer. If I was trying to do this in the next week, for example, just to speak like short term, what I would do is I would create kind of a screen that had all the things I needed for this. And then in post-production, create a custom function or whatever that did all the stuff that this library needs. And again, I'm not an expert with this library, so I don't know exactly what it needs, but I think it needs something to be loaded before the app loads. So in cases where you need to load an SDK or you need to load some custom library before the app loads, like we don't support that in Draftbit right now. So you would have to do that kind of after you export the code. But yeah, that's kind of the general MO is like, there are things that are easy to bring into Draftbit because the packages are kind of self-encapsulated. There are other packages and libraries that are not so encapsulated and require sort of some fundamental app level things. And those things we don't let you bring those into Draftbit right now, because then we can't live compile your application. And so, yeah, it's sort of like the more we go down that path as a business where we let you bring in those things, the more we'd have to figure out how to let you run this code locally on your own computer and do a bunch of other things. And it's kind of like there's many cascading hard things in that in that train of thinking. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at today.
Appreciate that question. It's totally it's a great question, and I think a question probably many of our other users have too. So thanks, Jay. And just for completeness, I just wanted to mention this comment from John, kind of related to this. Having a plugin system that users could create and share with others so that they don't need to write custom code would be great. So I think it's an interesting food for thought on how we, over time look to fill the gap of the things that we haven't built natively in Draftbit yet. But we have now reached the end of our time. Quick reminders, on Thursday, we have another office hours hosted by George. So please take some time to attend that if you want to continue the conversation with us and have other questions. Another note is next week is the Thanksgiving holiday week here in the US. And so we won't be hosting office hours next week, but we will be back the following week. So I think outside of this Thursdays, our next office hours will be on the 30th with this crew that you see here today. So again, thanks everybody for your time. I'll play us out with a little West Coast rap from Joanne, and I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Oh yeah.